Welcome to this week's Eccentric Minute, brought to you by Eccentric. This week's Eccentric Minute, we're going to review one of our foundational single leg exercises, and that is the K-box split squat. Just like with the squat, guys, make sure you got that tether taut when you're at full extension, and set yourself a counterbalance. Here we're going to use the barbell on the rack. Sink it down just like a regular split squat, chest tall, and drive through that front foot. I really like that back plate there to take tension off that back toe. As we progress forward, that's going to be big time to help us even keep our weight forward more. As we increase intensity and decrease volume, we're also typically cutting depth, therefore increasing transfer when we're looking at stopping power at a greater height. Guys, give this one a shot. I'm sure that this is one that you're going to find some great carryover for your athletes. I really hope you enjoyed this week's Eccentric Minute. Make sure you check them out at eccentric.com to find out everything you need about the K-box and the K-pulley. Being a strength and conditioning professional requires constant pursuit of better knowledge, better methods, and better means. But what if there was a place where strength and conditioning coaches could learn from some of the most innovative practitioners in the world, such as Jeff Moyer, Lachlan Wilmot, William Wayland, James the Thinker Smith, and Keir Wenham Flatt? Well, you could find multiple lectures from each of these top-level coaches and a few lectures and examples from yours truly as well, all in the Strength Coach Network. The Strength Coach Network is going to bring you well over 100 different lectures from some of the top practitioners in the world to be your one-stop shop for your continuing education and professional development. So hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASP today and get your 48-hour trial for only $1. That's strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASPS to get your 48-hour trial for only $1. I look forward to seeing you in the Strength Coach Network. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, I have the absolute pleasure of being able to sit down and talk training and developing your team culture with the head performance coach for women's basketball at the University of South Carolina, Mollie Binetti. After a quick little rundown of how Mollie got down to USC, guys, she's going to share with us, her why. And not just her why, but who has driven and built her why, and how these people continue to have a huge impact on her in her career today. Then she's going to get into the transition, moving from Louisville down to USC to get in with the women's basketball program, and really what she's had to do to win the team over. And a lot of this, guys, is going to be Mollie sharing with us some really big and deep internal reflections that have driven some education for her and led to some really awesome aha moments with the student athletes she gets to work with. This is really an awesome talk, guys. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Mollie, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Coach, I appreciate you. I've followed your work and appreciate your podcast and everything for a while, so I'm glad we finally got a chance to connect.
Yeah, I'm fired up for this one. We were talking a little bit, not just about the interesting 6 degrees of separation of everybody in sport, but also some pretty rad things you got cooking down there in SC. So for the 3/4 of a human being listening to this right now who doesn't know who Mollie is, let's let them know where you're at, how you got there, and what you're cooking down in South Carolina.
Yeah, awesome. I'm currently the head performance coach for women's basketball at South Carolina. I just started my second season this summer in June, and prior to that, I spent the last 4 years at the University of Louisville working for Tina Murray. I worked with a wide range of sports, but primarily assisted with basketball, had softball, tennis, volleyball. And prior to that, my first job, I started out at Purdue full-time, and I worked, I think, every sport that they had there a little bit, but 6 or 7 sports. And really starting out, my career started because of Todd Smith at Marquette, and I had no idea what I really wanted to do with my career. I thought initially maybe business. I was really good at accounting, finance, things like that. I knew I could make some money doing that, and quickly reminded myself of what I really love, and that's people. I love people. I love teaching. I love sport, and I tried to figure out a way, how can I combine sport and people and coaching and all of that. And I thought initially maybe athletic training. Spent a couple weeks observing in the training room and was like, nah, I can't tape ankles and I can't can't do this. This doesn't fire me up. And luckily, a couple weeks later, Todd came into one of my classes and did a presentation, and I was left in awe. I had no idea. I was never a college athlete. I always played sports growing up, but I didn't even know like strength and conditioning coaches really existed. I didn't know that was a profession. So I ended up interviewing him. He opened his doors and basically said, anytime you wanted to come observe or help out at all, like, doors open. And literally the next morning, I think at 5 a.m. I show up, and that was day one, and I just kept coming back and learning and figuring out what this world of performance was. And anytime I wasn't in class, I was in the weight room, and it kept evolving. Turned into a paid internship my last couple years. Went to Exos, did an internship there, and then came back. I did my master's at Minnesota and was an intern while I was in grad school there for a year. And really my biggest exposure was Division I athletics. And so starting out, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a Division I strength coach. Like that's my dream. That's my goal. And then I was 23 and I got my first Division I strength coach job. And so I was like, okay, what now? What do I do now? And no one had really taught me kind of how you navigate your life and your career in this field. And I kind of just took opportunities as they came and ran with it. And knew after a year at Purdue I wanted something a little bit different, and knew Tina was one of the front runners and one that paved the way for this profession as a whole, but especially women in this field. And so I knew if I went to work for her, I was going to be a better coach. And so I left after a year, went and worked for her. I grew more in those 4 years than I have probably my whole life, and fortunately opened some doors and led me to being really well prepared for this position at South Carolina.
Some really, really fantastic leaders in different realms of what we do in sport right now. You've gone from Todd to Tina and now Coach Staley, which if people listening don't know who Dawn Staley is, like, get out from under a rock. There's been some super vast leadership styles that you've been able to learn from. So let's talk about this project now that you've been working with and what you're trying to build and where this sort of formulated from, and then we'll piggyback off that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I think about it, and I've got to give credit to my boy Brett Bartholomew. He's been a mentor of mine for a long time, and reading his book and just talking with him and his concepts of really understanding your identity and why you do what you do, and why do I want to coach? Why do I love coaching? Why do I love teaching? Why do I love leading and all those things? And I think it goes back to having two really strong leaders in my life, and my grandma and my mom. Like, my grandma raised 8 kids on her own, was the strongest woman that I know. My mom raised me by herself, and seeing like that female leadership, exuded and as an example every single day. I think looking back, I can tie that to why I feel compelled, or why that speaks so deeply to me, is why I want to be a strong female leader, not just in sport and in basketball and all of that, but as a whole, in life in general. And so I've been really, really lucky and feel really grateful that in my career I've been exposed to some really incredible people really early in my career. That's been really inspiring. I remember being in grad school, I drove down to Kansas to go to Hootie's clinic and didn't know anybody. I drove down by myself just for the experience, and I knew Hootie was the best of the best, and I knew I was going to meet some really awesome people. And at the time, I was interviewing for the Purdue job, and I knew Dwayne Carlisle was going to be there, so it was also a chance for me to meet him in person and interview and all of that. But I remember while I'm there, this girl walks up to me, introduces herself as Megan Young. And I remember seeing Megan Young present at the coaches conference like a few months earlier and being like, wow, who's this awesome female? So I meet her, and then that night I end up at Hootie's house, and it's her, and it's Jerry Martin, and it's Scott Caulfield, and it's Megan, and I'm in this room of these strength coaches that to me are on this pedestal of like, wow, like these are some of the top people in our field. Like this is really, really cool. Like how did I get here? And then being exposed to Tina and her leadership, and I've met all these people throughout my career that have been really inspiring as leaders, but it's also forced me to want to level up and be on that level and make a greater impact. And I look at them, I'm like, wow, that's where I want to be someday. And then to have the opportunity to come work for Coach Staley, who arguably, the best women's college basketball coach, or but just basketball coach in general, the opportunity to come and learn from her more than anything was something that really like made me gravitate towards this position. So, and then going into a new role, you get settled in an environment, right? And you're used to kind of how things run. You're familiar with your athletes. Everything kind of becomes comfortable after a while. You've got a well-oiled machine going, and you almost take for granted the relationships that you have with the athletes that you work with, and the people, the staff that you work with, the environment that you're in. And it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's almost easy to make some impact there because you've got things under control. And then you go to a new environment, and I think no matter how old you are, just making a move, across the country, starting from scratch in terms of, you're going into a new place. You don't know the campus, you don't know the facilities, don't really know the coaching staff that you're working with yet. You definitely don't know your athletes. You don't even know where to park. You don't know the neighborhood that you live in. So you start from scratch, and you go in and you've got this plan prepared. You've spent the last 4 years like waiting for this moment, and you step into an environment, guns blazing, trying to implement what you want to, and you're met with this force, this resistance. Like, why should I listen to you? And I mean, if you work with basketball players in general, and that's as a stereotype, but in general can be very difficult to work with, and they have their walls up, they have their guard up, and it takes a while to break that down. And so when you go in and you're trying to implement a new program and a new way of doing things, it's like, why should I listen to you? And I was met with that. It was, there was pushback, there were confrontations, and it can really be defeating a little bit. It can kind of leave you questioning, like, wow, like, do I know what I'm doing? Am I good? Am I good at my job? Like, I know how to make you a better athlete, but how can I get you to do what I want? And I mean, when it comes down to it, like, that it stems from building relationships, and unfortunately, that takes time. But that first year left me really frustrated, and there were just a lot of experiences that left me, experiences that I've never dealt with before, and I'm talking, a wide range of things, and in the moment, you don't necessarily know how to handle it. And that I'm talking about right now, just like people interactions and experiences and conversations. And I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have handled that differently, or I should have said this, or man, I lost my cool and I shouldn't have done that. Like, just so many moments where I'm like, man, I messed up and I'm frustrated. And it all came back to just my ability to connect. And so it took me to really look in the mirror, and I said, what's the biggest way that I can improve to make the impact that I know I want to make, and to help these kids, really most importantly, to help these kids reach where they want to go. And so I invested a lot of time this off season in myself, and myself as a leader. And to me, those things are really the same, because I look at leadership and I look at my ability to connect in every realm, not just coaching. And so I knew if I could, that was the number one thing. If I could improve, I knew I was going to make a bigger impact in year 2. And so that's what I've done. And was really lucky to, I've been following Jeremy Boone. He's a performance coach, and just, I mean, he is a man of many hats, but got his emails a lot. And he had sent one day and said something about, if you're interested in this, he said something that really hit home, and I can't remember what it was, but it's like, we can chat, like, hit me up, like, email me back and let's set up a call. And I emailed him back, and we kind of went back and forth for, a couple weeks, but we ended up connecting and talking a few times over the phone. And I've been investing in his leadership program, and it's got me really, really fired up and excited about just the growth that I've seen take place in myself, but also the growth that I've seen take place in my relationships with everybody in my life, and especially with, the kids that I'm lucky enough to lead every day.
Well, let's keep going down that because I think that, when we were talking about this before, um, first of all, shout out to Jeremy. We've talked about getting you on the show for a long time, bro. This is like the third time your name's been dropped, too. So I know you listen. So hint, 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 star, 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 call me back. But, we talked about some of the motivation behind it and kind of the internal reflection. So let's get into that. What were some things that Mollie was looking to do better for her, to be better for the kids that she gets to work with?
I think the first thing you can bring it back to is the what most people call communication. And I've got to give Jeremy credit, I mean, for a lot of things, but he kind of changed the way that I viewed communication, and talks a lot about, connection trumps communication. And connection comes from the language that we used. And so I think that was the number one thing that resonated with me right off the bat, is how intentional am I actually being with the language that I use in the conversations that I have on a daily basis. And it's little things that you don't even realize may just completely change the way a conversation is interpreted by somebody else, the way that, it comes off. And so I paid really close attention and started to really try to implement a new language. And I think for me, it kind of came back to just being really authentic and true to myself. And I think when I initially started, especially here at South Carolina, I kind of came in guns blazing, and was trying to almost be, for lack of a better word, a hard ass. When really that's not my style. I don't like to be a dictator. I think of it as a partnership, not a dictatorship. And that's not my personality type at all, but I think I came in and I tried to like put my foot down right off the bat, and just immediately was kind of met with a punch back. And I really had to kind of rethink of how I'm structuring my environment, the language that I'm using with the people that I lead. And ultimately, I kind of came back and I was like, I blamed a lot of things last year. I was frustrated with this, X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, instead of blaming it on all these other things, maybe I just need to change my mindset about the situation that I'm in. Yeah, there's reason I could be frustrated. There's reason to be, mad about whatever it is, but I need to change my perspective on it, and think of what I'm able to do on a daily basis as an opportunity, and not something that, I have to do. It's something that I get to do. So I think it started with an internal, just a shift in perspective and mindset. And I think that in itself changed the way that I coach before I started this leader program with Jeremy. And then since then, it's really been about just changing the environment, changing the language that I use, and being able to lean into difficult moments and conversations and moments of being vulnerable with my athletes. Whereas, sometimes we shy away from them when, we either don't know what to say or it's confrontation, so it makes us uncomfortable. How to navigate those situations a little bit better.
No doubt about it. And I love that too, because it's now a matter of not just going in and having the self-reflection, but having the reflection to be able to identify what is going to be best for these young women and what is going to allow you now to be the example that you're hoping to be.
Yeah. And I remember my initial phone call with Jeremy. He asked me a question, and I literally think I just stammered and I didn't have an answer, because why? He goes, if I'm one of your athletes, or just in general, why should I follow you? Why should I follow you? And he goes, not just a generic, you should follow me because, I'm going to set a really good example, of how to be, how to reach your goals. I'm driven, all these things. Like, those are really generic answers. He goes, if I line up 5 of the best performance coaches in the country, they're next to you, why should I follow you? As opposed, what is it about you individually that would make me want to follow you opposed to anybody else? And I really I struggled to answer that. And that's one of the things he said too, is a lot of people struggle to answer that. And so I that was my first piece of homework, was figuring out why should why should anybody follow me? Because if I can't even answer that, like, what, I can't really create anything from that if I'm not being somebody that they want to follow and they want to listen to, other than the fact that I'm just I'm assigned their strength coach and they don't have a choice to come to weights and do this. But why do I actually listen to me?
So why do you?
It's an evolving answer, but part one is because I connect with you, rather than I connected with you as a human before I care about you as an athlete, and I'll walk with you on your mission. Okay, my mission is to walk with you on your mission and to help you reach that. But before anything, regardless of your performance, I connect with and I care about you as a human first and foremost. And I said it a little bit more eloquently when I initially wrote it down, but I think it comes back to my ability to connect with them as people first, and make their experience very personal each time that they're around me. And my mission is to walk alongside them, not to necessarily pull them from the front, but to walk along them as they figure out what their mission is, and kind of all the trials and tribulations that they'll face along that path to reach it.
I love it, because you gotta, they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I want, and it's one of those things too, right? Where when you hear an answer, and when you hear an answer from anybody, like, you want that to be something that fires you up a little bit. And so that's what I'm continuing to work on right now, is how do I refine that and live that every day, so I get fired up about it. Other people get fired up when I'm telling them about it. My athletes get fired up when they are in my presence and get to experience, the way that I coach them. And I think, to me, that's often the separating factor. And I look at the best performance coaches that I've been able to learn from, but also the ones that I've never even met, but that I look to, and they're all really, really good at their craft, but ultimately they're pretty phenomenal human beings first and foremost. And I think that's a separating factor when you look at, you go to NSCA, you go to the CSCCA, and you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of strength coaches. Like, what's separating you? Is it really that RPR, and you are certified in this and that, and these methods better than anybody? Probably not. And I think it's easy to kind of fall into that, especially young, early in your career. And I think I've been really lucky to be a young coach, but also be exposed to some really amazing people, but also kind of figure that out early, and that's really, I think, transformed the way that I think my career has taken, the path that it's taken, and where it's going.
So I don't know if you can answer this. So if you can't, we'll edit this out and we'll go another direction. But where were some epiphany and aha moments that you got with some of the young women that you get to coach? Some of those connections. Like, what are some things, and maybe one that you were like, oh, I can't believe that, or like one that was like, bingo, now we're cooking with grease.
Yeah. I want to make sure I'm doing it justice, but there's been, and sometimes it's almost like the most mundane and the small moments that actually hold the most impact, and like just little interactions that you have on a daily basis. But I'm thinking of, in particular, we talk a lot in our programs about self-identity, and especially with our athletes, I typically resonate with kind of like these lies of identity, and a lot of it is tied to their performance and what they do, and their best moments, their worst moments, and things like that. And I had a couple incidents with. We have a freshman who's a walk-on. The You couldn't find a better kid. I mean, somebody who is genuinely just a loving person, like the best teammate, works her tail off. Not the most, when you look at the rest of our team, not the most genetically gifted or most athletic or anything like that. And physical tasks are hard for her. Conditioning is one that's really hard for her. And anytime we would condition this preseason, she really, really struggled with this anxiety and this fear of not making her times, or not, not being the teammate or whatever it is in her mind that she needed to be. She was really, really afraid of not being good enough in that moment. And so her identity was so heavily tied to just not being good enough. She wants to do so well. She wants to be the best teammate. She knows that her role is not going to be the biggest one on her team, but she knows that she can still make an impact and we can use her. So she's really concerned about what her teammates think of her and what her coaches think of her. And so we had just we have different groups that we train in. On Wednesdays, unfortunately, she's got a lot of class conflicts, so she has to come in and train at 7. And Wednesday's the day that we run. And she was about to run by herself at 7. Nobody else is in that group. And all of a sudden, we had 6 other kids show up and run with her at 7 in the morning that day. And the whole time she was, the self-talk that she was going through in her head was, I'm not going to make it. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't breathe. She pushes through. She makes her times. We have a short lift right after that. So we get in the weight room, and I'm kind of getting things organized as I overhear some of them talking. And, she's asking one of our players, what can I do? What can I do better? I just want to, make sure I'm doing everything that I can. Like, I'm really struggling with this. Like, how can I be better? And I hear, their teammates talking to her about, how the type of teammate that she is. And, if you feel like you're not conditioned enough, like you're doing extra and things like that. And there's this tie into this self-doubt and this identity. And we had just talked about it in our leadership call. And we were talking about these lies of identity. And it was a really perfect opportunity for me to kind of step in. And I had that whole group there and talk about kind of the lies of identity that we tell ourselves. Where we tell ourselves that, I am what I do. I am what I have, material things. I am what others say or think about me. I am nothing more than my worst moment. I'm nothing more than my best moment. And for her, it's, I am what I do. And, I am what other people say and think of me. And she's, really, really just concerned about her performance. She wants to perform and she wants to live up to it. And so it was an opportunity for me to step in, and I talked about those key points. And I said, hey, listen, I'm like, you can't outperform your self-identity. So if you think that you're not good enough, you're never going to be able to outperform that. If you think that you are, X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be, whatever story you're telling yourself, you can't outperform that. I'm like, but imagine if you are telling yourself a different story. I'm like, then imagine the type of energy and the type of outcome that you might get when you tie your identity to something different than what the story is in your head right now. And I said, listen, like, regardless of performance, like, it doesn't change the way that I look at you or I feel about you. It doesn't change the way that your teammates think about you. I'm like, your identity is more than your times on this run. Your identity is about your strengths, which are loving on people, being a great teammate, and working your tail off and doing everything that you can. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you pass, if you fail, it doesn't matter. Regardless of performance, you matter, and regardless of what just happened or what's about to happen, you bring those other aspects to the table. So it's kind of crazy once you start to get these, we're talking about these different things in the calls, and you see opportunities and you see these experiences pop up in real life, and you're like, wow, like, okay, I have the tools to make a bigger impact in those moments and to tell a different story for, that athlete or those athletes in that moment.
Well, and moment aside, that can be a life-changing situation for that young lady.
Yeah, and it was funny because I think it was a week or two after it was the same day. We had the same type of conditioning, but we had a little bit more volume that day. We had more reps, and we were stretching at the end, and I was stretching her personally and just assisting her stretch. And she looked at me and she goes, I didn't think that I could do it when I walked in. She goes, but I changed the story that I was telling myself as we kept going. And I was like, imagine if, just imagine if you continue to change that story and you go from believing that you're not good enough or that you can't to believing that you're deserving of being here and deserving of all these things. And like your behavior, your outcomes, all of that is going to change. So it's a work in progress, but it's pretty cool to see kind of that light bulb come on a little bit, and they're like, wow, okay, like I'm gonna be okay after all. I didn't think I could do it, but I did it, and I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, that's freaking killer. That's awesome. That's yeah. Because that's a situation now where you just took a kid and literally flipped her on her head, and is going to be able to get past things that we would never think about in sets and reps, and is going to be better for everything because of that.
Yeah, and it's since that moment, you can tell like there's a trust there, and there's a she'll come into my office and she's dealing with some things in other areas, and she's like, I need your help. Like she goes, I know that you're going to tell me the truth, and I know that you're somebody that can help me navigate this. And at the end of the day, you want to know that they as athletes want to know that you're going to run through a wall for them to help them get where they want to go. And I think in return, we show them that they're going to do the same for us, and that they are. But that doesn't come without us showing them that we're in it with them, and ultimately they're where they want to reach, both individually and as a team, outweighs anything that we want. We don't want things from them. We want things for them. And I think that's a key shift in just language there. Is it's not what I'm asking from you. I'm not making you do this because I want that from you, but I want this because I want that for you. I want your mission to happen for you, not because I want something from it.
We want things for them, not from them, is absolutely perfect. Mollie, let me get you out of here on this. Where can they learn more? Where can they see what you're doing? Where can they follow you so that we can make sure that, people can get a little check on this? Because I think that there's a lot of coaches that need to go back and listen to what she said one more time there, because that's some pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, you can reach me, my email. I'm going to let you find that online if you want it, but on Twitter, I'm pretty active on Twitter, Coach Binetti. You can follow me there. Instagram, I'm on there as well, but more than happy to speak with anybody who wants to chat more, and really appreciative of you having me on here, and hopefully can connect with some others on the field that want to chat a little bit more.
Awesome, Mollie. Thank you so much for your time. This is sensational. People are going to love it.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yeah, cheers. We'll be in touch real soon.
All right, sounds good.
And a huge thank you to South Carolina's Mollie Bonetti for spending the time with us today. Guys, just a coach with some open, honest, candid sharing, really just opening it all up and laying it out there to give us an absolutely sensational example of really how we can identify better with the young people that we get to coach. Mollie, I can't thank you enough for being so open, honest, and candid in your sharing today. This is absolutely killer stuff. Keep kicking butt down there, Mollie. We're rooting for you hard up here at Richmond, Virginia. And as always, guys, if you did enjoy the talk, please share it through the social media outlet of your choice. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. And if you are sharing it on Twitter, make sure you tag her at Coach Bonetti on Twitter, because she's sharing a lot of great content out there too, guys. So make sure you're giving her a follow. And as always, guys, thank you for everything that you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.